spoiler alert, if women were freely communicating with each other, it would be a lot harder to keep us under control. Don't let the bastards grind you down, as Handmaid's Tale would say. I wish I knew it in Latin off the top of my head, but I don't. So they basically weaponized this idea of women talking to each other and slapped a label on it to make us second guess doing it. And the gossip riddle is just brutal. It's a physical reminder that certain people would rather see us silent than powerful. Gossip wasn't always this dirty word. The patriarchy, as I just explained, made it out to be. Back in the gay. Freudian slip. For the girls and the gays. Back in the day, gossip was basically the original group chat. First of all, like, I've been watching 30 Rock lately, or like was my like most recent bedtime show, but now I'm watching The Office, but whatever. So in 30 Rock, like which happened way before the Me Too movement, like there's a Harvey Weinstein joke. Maybe I'll find the energy to splice it in here. Maybe I won't. Well, time will tell. But they make a Harvey Weinstein joke. And it's like everyone in the industry knew what Harvey Weinstein was doing. Why? Because people were talking about it. AKA women were getting SA'd and raped by Weinstein, and they were gossiping about it. And that built intel. And some women heard that story and knew to stay away. Some women, unfortunately, didn't. But like gossip spread that word. And then we had the beauty of Twitter, and it was like gossip entered the chat. Everyone was out there, #MeToo, spilling their tea, sharing their truth and their story. It might seem like I'm trying to minimize the Me Too movement. I'm not. I'm just trying to show that like when you tell your truth, when you share your story, which I feel like is gossip, it can be powerful. It can be life-changing. Let's just think about that for a second. The way in which the Me Too movement not only informed like what was going on, like was able to spread awareness about how perpetrators be predatory and how like perpetrators perpetrate, but it was really able to inform people of the way in which they were violated. Like I think back to essays that happened to me prior to the Me Too movement, and I knew it was wrong, but because it wasn't like the worst case scenario that could have happened, like I didn't even really understand the ways in which I was violated until the Me Too movement. I think we need to think about the ways that anger is a powerful tool that can be used for change and also maybe for protection, and not as this thing that invalidates you. Anger can be used to create a positive change. And when you're a woman, I strongly believe that anger or being mean or being a bitch or being unlikable can save your life. Point is that serial killers often lure women in by like asking them for help, being like, hey, will you help me put this in my car? And the woman's like, yeah. And no victim blaming, especially it was the 70s. They didn't have all the information we have now about what predators men can be, but being helpful, being kind, and not just being an asshole and saying no to men literally could get you killed. And it has gotten women killed. So think about that the next time you want to be angry and mean and you're worried the stranger you don't know might think you're unlikable. Be mean, be angry. I mean, again, obviously, like everything in moderation, and, you know, don't just like be being a Karen 24/7 for no reason, but reclaim your anger. This one, I really wish I would have learned ages ago. Okay, first of all, trying to be low maintenance around a guy is the worst way to get yourself into a happy relationship. So if you're doing that, don't. Trust me, don't. Because then you're just going to teach them that they don't have to show up for you. And who wants a partner that doesn't show up for them? Especially when you think about the ways that women often are predisposed to carry the mental load of every relationship. So historically, thinness was weaponized by white supremacy as a marker of civilization, of how civilized someone was. And it was used as a way to shame Black, Indigenous, and essentially non-European bodies. Colonizers and white supremacists used this as one of the many tools to label certain people uncivilized or undesirable, basically trying to make them less human. We know the ways in which they were doing that already with skin color, and this was just like another way to add to that horrible way of thinking, which I think for me, that has been really powerful. Whenever I am catching myself in a moment of being fat phobic or being super negative or feeling like a way about like anti-fatness, I'm just like, you are upholding what these colonizer white supremacists wanted you to do. So don't. Just stop. Just stop doing that. Why are you pushing this colonizer agenda in 2025? Put that down. I don't want to be a white supremacist. This is a very, very powerful yet simple way in which we can sort of pull out pieces of the Jenga tower that is white supremacy and is the patriarchy that is so prevalent around us. It's just like, by not being fat phobic, by not being so obsessed with the way you look or the ways others look, or like just yuck. Ugh, I'm so over it, but I'm still so in it. So I am finding it hard to talk about. And we know this today, that your weight isn't necessarily indicative to good health. And that's the same way it was when white supremacy was wielding fat phobia as a tool. Like, it wasn't about health, it was about power. And then the patriarchy hopped on board and started making a woman's worth how small she could make herself, literally and figuratively. And think about it, like, we're obsessing over calories and thigh gaps, and we're not challenging the systems that keep us down. Less calorie counting, more standing up for human rights is my cardio. That's what I want to do here. And as we both know, it's everywhere. Media over and over again glorifies one sort of body type while erasing other diverse and beautiful ones. And yeah, we're becoming more inclusive. And I'm thankful to see more representation, but we got a long way to go. And I think it really does start at looking at the ways this is yielded as a weapon of oppression. And people are like, you're a single, ugly, old, fat woman. Shut the F up. Like, you are not valid. Like, what you have to say does not matter because you are a single 30-plus-year-old woman who's not attractive and who has a belly. Like, that is what they tell me. And I think that is exactly like proving the point of everything I'm trying to say, is like, this system of diet culture, this like normalization of diet culture and judging people is about getting you to shut the fuck up. It is about getting you to be insecure and to not speak your truth and to stay small and to shut the fuck up. I see it viscerally in my comment section, and so it's very easy for me to spot because people are literally being like, shut up, go eat a salad. You had a belly when you stood up, so you shouldn't say anything. And I'm old enough to be like, okay, first of all, you're probably like a 14-year-old with zero facial hair, so I'm not gonna fucking listen to you. But second of all, like, wow, do you feel empowered to say that to me? And wow, do you know, or do you think that that will be the thing that shuts me up? If you know me, you know I love to yap. I'm not gonna shut the fuck up ever. I could gain 20, 100 pounds, lose 20, 100 pounds, I'm going to stay fucking talking. But the fact that you think that that is a valid excuse or a valid way to tell me that like the points I'm making don't matter and the things I have to say don't matter and my truth shouldn't be shared is wild. I think about ex-boyfriends that really, really knew how to make me feel insecure about like, they didn't want me to wear something short or slutty and it's sexy that looked amazing on me, and they would just like comment on my body so that I would change into whatever they wanted me to wear. Tactic of manipulation. But I really, really choose like empowerment and joy and love. And in a world that is asking you to hate yourself, like choosing joy and love and kindness and compassion is such a beautifully radical act. And I really feel like if you're like listening to this and you're lost and you're like, I hear you, I understand you, but like I am stuck in this toxic cycle. Again, like diet culture is like that toxic ex. And as much as you want to leave it, it can be very hard sometimes. I've been there and I get you, and that's valid. Start with being compassionate to yourself. Start with being compassionate about the fact that you don't know how to get out of this cycle. Kindness, compassion, love, and joy will get you where you want to go. I have a friend I was just talking to who in her first year of being a small business owner and was like feeling like she couldn't do anything or put anything out there without it being so perfect. And I was like, only women are this critical about everything. What would a white man do in your position? He would literally like throw everything at the wall and be down for it. And like, we should be able to live our lives without having this pressure that if it's not perfect, it's not valid, because that's not true. You know, if anything, failure is a stepping stone to success. So like, let it happen, let it fail, let it not be perfect. Women are the weaker sex. Women are hysterical and dramatic, and the patriarchy pushes these narratives to invalidate women, and that invalidating us is supposed to keep us like in our place and fucking silent. And honestly, it worked on me for a while because I was so like beaten down by the healthcare system that I just like stopped trying to get help. But women's pain isn't paid attention to, so they don't care about shit like endometriosis. Like that's insane to me. That's insane to me. And I see it over and over again. Like honestly, endometriosis aside, like the fact that we all get our periods and just like vibe go to fucking work, put our little tampons up our sleeves so we don't offend anybody on the way to the bathroom while we're like bleeding out our fucking inside. And I feel like all these examples, again, other than the way in which the patriarchy tries to make our pain and our feelings and our voices and our experiences less valid, under the patriarchy, women are also expected to be okay with not having bodily autonomy. And this like way that it chips making our experiences and our pain and our feelings and our this and that less valid is like the same branch of the patriarchy that expects women to be okay not having bodily autonomy. And I think that is like the root of the root of the root that I'm trying to get at with a lot of this stuff, because it's like the same thing in a different font. And I feel like a lot of men don't fucking realize like the ways in which that is pervasive to us and the ways in which we experience this in like the micro and the macro over and over again. And like the ways in which society is just expecting us to be okay with fucking men who can't find a telling us when and how we're supposed to get pregnant. And just for the record, while I'm on my little ranty rant here, there is no such thing as being pro-life. You are not pro-life. That's not for real. You cannot be pro-life and pro-death penalty. You cannot be pro-life and pro everyone should have a gun when guns are the number one thing killing children and teens in the US. You cannot be pro-life when these abortion bans make maternal and infant mortality rates 6 times higher in the states that they are in. You cannot be pro-life when women are dying because of these bans. That's not pro-life. You know what that is? That's pro-forced birth. That is pro-forced birth. And that's all that is. Okay? So let me just set that right there so you know where I stand on that. Okay? If you don't know me and what I'm about, now you do. Anyways, Black women in the United States are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy complications than white women. Why is this still happening? Like, that is crazy to me. And what's even more unfortunate is how this is not information that everyone knows and has. When I first learned about this, I was like, huh? What? Why? I need to, why the fuck is this still happening? Like, that's crazy to me. And basically what I learned is that implicit bias in healthcare, especially towards Black women, plays a huge role in these horrifying stats. So basically everything I've talked about in this podcast about women's voices being discredited and women not being listened to, it's times 3 to 4 when it comes to Black women. And again, this troubling stat highlights the need to really understand how to advocate for yourself and others during pregnancy, but also just during medical situations, and why it's even more crucial to women of color and to center voices of Black women in this conversation. Again, it can be very overwhelming when you're put on the spot and have to like talk about everything and you forget this and that, right? Every random symptom you feel down. Maybe they're related, maybe they're not. Present them all. Every day, if you're dealing with a health issue, like take a note of it. Take a note of it and just see so you can refer back to. Again, like in this world, you kind of have to be meticulous when it comes to advocating for yourself, and it can be exhausting, but it's well worth it. Number 2, this might seem kind of obvious, but research your provider. Look for a specialist who's focused on women's health or naturopathy if that's your thing, or like figure out what's right for you. And unfortunately, it does take trial and error. And unfortunately, trial and error means error. Error is a part of that, and that sucks. But really figure out what kind of doctor suits you. And don't hesitate to switch if it's not working. You can leave. You can go. Hack number 3, don't be afraid to speak up and advocate for yourself. I know that's what this whole segment is about, is different ways of advocating for yourself and like the preparation it takes to advocate for yourself. But I think the hardest one to get through, especially because so many women are conditioned to not disturb the status quo and to peacekeep and to be people pleasers. And it's a lot harder than it sounds advocating for yourself. It's a lot harder than it sounds saying like when a doctor tells you something and you're like, no, that's not good enough. Like I need more help. But if you came here for permission, this is me giving you that permission. And I hope you give it to yourself because that's what really matters. So that's a little bit of what I've learned throughout my healthcare journey. The more I know, the more I'll share. In the meantime, do you have any healthcare hack? And if these men think that we get some more matriarchal values in here, they're going to start being oppressed. Like, of course, they're not going to support it. When actually, like, men are not thriving under the patriarchy. Men are having a real hard time, i.e. mass shootings. Like, No, they're having a hard time. They need to journal and they need to feel their feelings and they need therapy. So does everyone. But men are having a hard time under the patriarchy and it shows, okay? Families and children do not thrive under the patriarchy and it shows, especially in America. But for some reason, I feel like collaboration is seen as weak in the patriarchy. Asking for help is seen as weak in the patriarchy. There's this like emphasis on doing it all yourself and grinning and bearing it and struggling. And one of the only ways to be successful is if you struggle through it, even though like it's not true. I want it to be, let's pick each other. Got it? So if you have a pen and paper, this is where I encourage you to get it out for a little bit of journaling. If not, if you're on a walk or listening to this in your car, which is often where I'm listening to podcasts, you could just pause it and maybe have a little think to yourself. Maybe if you're at home, you could just pause it and say some things out loud, but whatever works for you. Take a moment to consider this. Think about the last time you felt threatened by another woman. What if, instead of competing, you'd teamed up? How might that have changed your outcome? Again, a huge part of the patriarchy and the pick-meism of the patriarchy is pitting women against each other for men, for job roles, for this, for that, where it's like, what if we just collaborated? There are a lot of people, because of misconceptions about the matriarchy, because of ignorance about the matriarchy, because of, the propaganda everywhere promoting the patriarchy, and for their own internal biases, who are threatened by the matriarchy. They're scared of the matriarchy. And I guess I'm here to say that if you are threatened by the matriarchy, you may be capitalizing off the oppression of women. And I say this again because the matriarchy wants to support everyone. Again, it's not just women are in charge and men are like, the gender roles just aren't reversed between patriarchy and matriarchy. They are inherently different ways of being in society. The patriarchy supports individualism and power. The matriarchy supports the collective and nurturing that. So if the matriarchy threatens you and you don't want to be a part of a world where the collective is thriving, you are probably profiting, capitalizing, living your best life, or so you think, probably falsely think, off the oppression of women, because there's no other reason. There's no other reason that makes sense to me why you would prefer to operate under the patriarchy than the matriarchy. There's just not. Every 10 minutes, somewhere in the world, a woman or girl is killed by someone she knows and probably loves. Many mass shooters have histories of domestic violence or cite hatred for women as a motivating factor. When we talk about gun reform in the US, it's like, okay, let people have guns. Let's safe people have guns. Like if you have a record of DV, you should not be able to have a gun. And like that is an extreme point of view in America. This seems like common sense gun laws to me, but that is an extreme point of view in America. I can't imagine if women were predominantly gun owners and perpetrators of DV, that this system would be like, yeah, give them guns, because these extremists want you to be so overwhelmed with misogyny that A, it becomes normal, which guilty. I am guilty of that. I'm sure we all are to some degree. But B, that you're exhausted. I know after the results of this last election.
I didn't get that.
Oh my God. So why are you listening to me? Siri. Nothing. Siri, never mind.
Okay.
Nosy bitch. Holy cow. She literally terrified me. Okay. After the results of the last election, it left me feeling very, very like, I can't do this anymore, guys. I need to opt out. Take a break. Mental health is important. And I've been doing that. And also like, you got to get back in the game, girl. That's what they want. They want you to be so tired or feel so helpless that you opt out. And you're not helpless. We're powerful and we're more powerful together. A lot of media and narratives when like, especially when the shooter is white or the terrorists are white, they're like, their mental health isn't well. And it's like, no, he's a terrorist. Yeah, sure, mental health is part of it, but there's like a lot of other stuff going on here, which, could you imagine if on September 12th, they were like, Osama bin Laden, he really struggles with his mental health. Like they would never do that to a brown or a black person. To this day, I see white people on the internet talking about how George Floyd was an addict, as if that justifies the way he was murdered. Like what? And he wasn't even doing anything violent. Yet these white men and boys can shoot up movie theaters and schools and synagogues and churches and pre-Ks, elementary school. And it's like, well, they're having a rough day. And that is part of the problem. The fact that we can't call a spade because of racism and white supremacy is part of the problem. Joy, love, compassion, softness, those are all radical acts in this system, in this regime, in this patriarchy, in this world in which misogyny wants to control you and keep you down or keep you silent. So if you don't know where to start by accessing your joy and your love and your compassion and leaning into your soft girl era. Every girl listening can relate to, or probably have an example themselves of a time where they were obsessing over a man, which it's like, deep down, you're like, I know I'm not even that into him. I know he's not even that great. Like, the sex wasn't that good. He isn't that hot. He's not that funny. I mean, he's great and he's a catch. And I kind of saw it going somewhere and I got really excited about it. And then he like ghosts or dips out or withdraws and you're like chasing him and so caught up. And like some level of you is like, bro, why are you being like this? Because you know he ain't shit. And especially if he's treating like you like this, he ain't shit. But you can't really break that cycle and you find yourself like in that pattern. And eventually you get over it and you're like, yeah, that guy really was not anything and totally not the man of my dreams. Especially because the man of my dreams would never treat me like that or I have me out here chasing men or whatever because I know my worth. But I feel like we all have that story. No matter the woman, no matter how secure you are, there's someone who can like bring out that in you. And I think it is very easy for women to be put in that position again because we're conditioned to like want that approval from men. So sometimes it's not even like you are that into him. You just like need that approval. When you don't get it, you're like a hamster on a wheel, like trying to get it, even though it doesn't make sense. Number one, first and foremost, boys will be boys. Okay. So why are girls needing to tolerate bad behavior from boys? Like whether it's them teasing them or being aggressive, that sort of thing puts the burden of responsibilities on girls to adapt to boys rather than teaching boys how to learn respect and boundaries. So no more boys will be boys. That one is phasing out. I see that one phasing out. Let's fully just we don't need that anymore. I think another thing is like letting boys win so they don't feel bad. If it's a game, a race, or an argument, girls are often encouraged to let boys win. Again, why are we teaching young girls to protect boys' egos, teaching girls to prioritize male feelings over their own success and joy, and not teaching boys just like not to be sore losers and to be able to process emotions? Another one, don't be bossy. When girls show leadership or assertiveness, they're labeled as bossy rather than being encouraged to develop their confidence and their leadership skills. Yeah, I was definitely one of those kids that they were like, she's going to make a great lawyer. She's going to make her a great lawyer because I had a point to prove. And if I knew I was right, I wouldn't shut up about it. Telling girls you need to smile more, just ew. It's creepy. First of all, that's creepy. Just no, just hard stop. No, I'm not even going to explain that one. Just no. He's only being mean because he likes you. This is actually really toxic. And this narrative conditioned girls to associate mistreatment with affection, which is like so backwards. No, thank you. And again, prioritizing the boys' feelings over their own pain and discomfort and like making excuses for them. Like, no, hell no. Being told to sit like a lady. Let me spread out here. Girls are taught to keep their legs crossed, to sit quietly and like to take up as little space as possible, when boys are rarely told to limit their physical expression or their physical presence is probably a better way to say that. And the one that I heard up until like the ripe age of 25 is you don't want to scare him off. You don't want to scare boys off. Whether it's about being too smart or too opinionated or too ambitious, girls are often warned not to intimidate boys, which again teaches them to diminish their own accomplishments and avoid challenging male egos. What is one thing you've done recently purely for yourself? Something that brought you joy without caring who noticed. I have been obsessed with Doechii lately and love blasting Doechii in my headphones when I'm at the gym. And like, I can't help but like do a little like in between sets, like a little like, you know, I'm not going to be like out there like dancing because that's just not me to do that in a public space like that. But like, I really am just like, you know, I just let out a little. And that really brings me so much joy. And it is like the quintessential saying, dance like no one's watching. And I sort of do get my little groove on at the gym. And I love it because it just feels so good. And Doechii goes so hard. And it just has been like my favorite part of my workouts lately. And it's like winter vibes. And I have been struggling to get to the gym. So that is probably my answer to this one because it has brought me so much joy. And it really is me being like, I don't care if people are watching me thinking I'm weird or whatever. I don't care who notices. Like, I'm a do me. And that this is a part of it. Do you like him? Or do you just like the idea of being liked by a guy? There's a big difference. And she was like, it was all my friend's fault. Mary's like, it was Cece and Jessica peer pressured me and they made me do all these drugs and sleep with all these people. And I wasn't even like sleeping with guys like that in college. Like there were like a few here and there, but like I was like early on my sexual awakening. And so I was like, bitch, what are you talking about? You like slept with more dudes than me. How are you blaming this on me? And not only did she tell him and was like, LOL, guys, follow along. That's not how it was. She like told him and then was like, hey, Jessica, Cece, I can't be friends with you anymore because like he doesn't want me to be friends with you. And I don't want to be friends with you because I'm relooking at all of our college days. And like you guys were horrible influences on me and made me do all this stuff I want to do. But she stayed friends with Rebecca because Rebecca was like not as wild as us. And I was like, okay, I might have peer pressured you to smoke weed because like I was that girl in college who was like smoking weed all day, every day. I had some things I was working through. That was my coping mechanism. And maybe peer pressured you to drink now and then, which like, that's not fucking cool. I get it, but it was a different time. But like, no, I'm not going to sit here and let you tell me that like me and Jessica were like peer pressuring you to do drugs and stuff. You were doing it so much, Mary, that I came to you at certain points and I was like, are you good? Like you're doing this every weekend. Like that's really excessive. And I won't get into the details of it all. So basically she stopped being friends with us because of this guy. And not only did she stop being friends with me and Jessica, Mary also like unfollowed, deleted like everyone on Facebook who she was friends with, who we went to college with, like all of our friends, all of our acquaintances, just like deleted other than Rebecca. And yeah, same with Instagram. And she ended up marrying this guy. And I was always like, okay, once they get divorced, like I'll be here for her to help her pick up the pieces. But then she became a Trumper and like say la vie. But yeah, they did end up getting divorced and she like ditched all of her friends for that. At one point she came and like apologized to me and invited me to her wedding, which was like 4 months after this happened. It all happened so fast. And I like accepted her apology because I am also like, I don't like to be in conflict with people. But she never apologized to Jessica. And so I felt like that was such a red flag that like she would take accountability what she did to me and not Jessica because she did the same thing to both of us. And that made me feel like her apology was like bullshit. And at that time I met and was like seriously dating my now husband and was like chilling out a little bit more. And I feel like maybe that's why she was like, oh, I don't know. But anyways, long story short, my best friend from college stopped being friends with me because she wanted to seem less promiscuous and less like adventurous and blamed me and my friend Jessica and was like, I can't be friends with you anymore. And then proceeded to block everyone we went to college with on Facebook other than like one of our friends, Rebecca. So that's the story. It's really long-winded, but it's a lot of details and it's a lot of pick-me-ism. They're divorced now and she's married to someone new. So I wish her the best, but you know, no regrets. Like, I think it's like that double standard. That's when I start to be like, oh, so are you giving this rando who you just met, who's probably treating you poorly, more attention than like your best friend or like your really good friend, you know? Not that like I need my friends to center me, but you know, and again, if it's like someone meets someone and they're super excited about them and it doesn't happen every week, that's like, go off, like have your moment with that person. Like you get wrapped up in it in the beginning. We all do. But I'm more talking about someone who's like every week it's a new guy or like every couple of weeks it's a new guy. And every single time that person is like on a pedestal and prioritized in a way that they like don't with you or like drop you once they have that person. And to piggyback off that is also tolerating bad behavior when dating. Making excuses for a man who always cancels plans or doesn't respect your boundaries or makes minimal effort or, you know, is sketchy. Often these friendships are exhausting because being friends with the male-centered woman is like doing emotional push-ups for somebody who is too busy prioritizing Chad to even realize you're struggling. So it is a lot of emotional labor for someone who probably doesn't take you into account that often, or they struggle to take you into account and prioritize you if a man is near them. I watched a TikTok the other day and it was basically a young mom explaining how she's never seen her or any of her mom friends or anyone like she knows be like, I have to leave the kids and go do this, like insert hobby, insert activity that takes like a whole day. Whereas most of the dads that are affiliated in this mom group, like the mom's partners, like every Sunday, every whatever day, depending on the sport, let's say Sunday, we're in football season, let's say it's Sunday, they're like, it's Sunday. Like I gotta leave the kids, I gotta not be on duty as a dad, and I gotta go watch the game. And the point she was making was like, dads get to do that. Like moms don't get to do that. Like I can't think of one thing where it's like, yeah, maybe the mom will like do her Pilates class on Sunday, but that's like an hour, 2 hours max if like the gym is far and it's a long drive. But there is nothing that women really get to just like clock out of being a mom. Like it seems a lot more acceptable by society that men get to do that. And I think this analogy of like the game is on, the sports are on, like of course the man gets to go watch and like don't worry, we'll take care of the kids, like or moms will take care of the kids and the dads get to do whatever, like is the perfect example to demonstrate how emotional labor shows up in heteronormative relationships and what that means for like the extra burden that are placed on moms and on women opposed to their male father counterparts. So less and less kids are being born, less and less people are choosing to be parents. And I know that that's not a coincidence, is because we're at a place where women don't need to do this for their safety. Like back in the day, marriage is still a contract and technically like a business transaction in that way. But that's like where marriage came from. It was like a contract. And then women's roles were just to like pump out babies and couldn't work and yada, yada, yada. And now we're in a place where women don't need a man to be successful and have like security and like money and safety. They don't need a man to have kids. But even with that, like there are so many studies that show that like single childless women like live longer, are healthier, are happier on average, like all of these things. It's economic control through reproductive control. And that's what so many people are missing about this. Is it moral to have an abortion or not? Because it's not about morality. It's not. Once the government is involved, it's not about morality. Once Roe v. Wade got overturned, it's not about morality anymore. It is about control. When women can't decide when they want to have kids, their career trajectories, their education, their choices and relationships, and their personal ambitions all get derailed. And the patriarchy knows this. Our government knows this. And this is why these bans are one of the biggest ways, the biggest examples of how motherhood is being weaponized at the moment. And I hate to be the one to break the news to you, but if your man voted for a politician who is pushing this kind of legislation, he thinks of you as property, he thinks of you as livestock, he thinks of you as a breeder, not as a person. He thinks of you as an accessory. He does not think of you as a human being. I think boundary setting is first and foremost. You got to set boundaries like a boss. And boundaries can feel really selfish and horrible, but you really just got to stop apologizing and you got to start saying no more. And, you know, a good reframe is that boundaries aren't selfish. They are revolutionary. Finding ways to share the load is essential. And again, it doesn't have to be equal, but if you can find ways that are equitable, I honestly feel like it will also help both parties in the relationship, because if someone is burnt out, both parties end up feeling that, whether the man has more free time or not. Like he's going to feel you loathing your life and like not being a happy partner or person like that. You feel that. You may have experienced this IRL if you've been with a guy who's can be maybe like sweet or tender with you. And then once he's in front of his friends, his personality totally changes. And if you don't believe me, look at who's running our country right now. Like, I feel so crazy even talking about this because I'm like, we're so in the thick of it, you guys. We're so in the thick of it right now. Jeez. And the reason it's so important to examine social dominance theory is because it really explains how hierarchies are maintained through power imbalances. Like the whole goal is for there to be a power imbalance, and we can see where those discrepancies lie and who's gaining from that and who is, you know, being oppressed because of that. And not only is success and power maintained through power imbalances, but men often view like dominance, alpha, toxic masculinity as the marker of success. And like back to how this affects women other than just like on the micro level, like, bro, of course you're not going to be happy in a relationship like that because you're not being valued. Like it creates unhealthy dynamics. Especially when men feel the need to assert control and like assert their power over others. That often trickles down into their relationships. And like, that's not good. And if you don't believe me, why don't you go look up the #1 cause of death for pregnant women in the United States? I might be global, actually, but look it up. You know what it is? It's homicide. It's them being murdered. So if you don't think men have a control issue, maybe go think again. Bleak facts. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is real. This is real life, guys. We got to acknowledge it and move through it so that we can address it and not normalize it. Watch for signs of controlling behavior. #1, like a partner making all the decisions or dismissing your opinions. I don't know if you guys read the Colleen Hoover book, It Ends With Us. and watch the movie, I know there's like a lot of drama around Jason Baldoni and Blake Lively and all of that. So like whoever did watch the movie and read the book, I really like Colleen Hoover's books, which apparently is like controversial because she's like, people aren't happy with her and how she's portrayed domestic violence and things like that. So my bad. I didn't know that when I liked it. I just genuinely liked it. And then all this drama came out and everyone was like, yeah, F her. And I was like, wait, what? So before I knew that that it was like a no to like her, I liked her. Sorry if that makes me a pick me. It's my truth. I read like so many Colleen Hoover books and I really, really liked It Ends With Us. That was one of the first ones of hers I read because it was all over Book Talk and I was like, dope, I'm going to read it. I read it in like a day. It felt like probably more like a week, but like that's really fast for me to finish a book in that amount of time. And then I bought like 10 more of her books. Anyways, my favorite parts of her book that they left out of the movie and I was pissed is that when Lily, Blake Lively's character, goes to, what's her name, the sister's party, she in the book brings a gay guy who's like her best friend from work, the place she was working before she opened the flower shop. And Ryle is like furious that she brings a guy with her and is like, you brought him to piss me off. Da, 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 da. Like, why would you bring another man here? And like acting a fool. And she's like, yo, chill, he's gay. Like, what's your problem? He's like my gay bestie. Like, why are you being weird? And like, when that scene happened, your girl's been around the block a few times. Your girl's been dating toxic men before. Not currently. My husband is a saint. He's the best. But, you know, I had to learn the hard way what are red flags by living through them. And seeing that behavior in the book, I knew where we were headed. I knew we were headed towards violence because I was like, there's no way you can be that controlling before even dating someone and it not be a red flag. So that was a long tangent, but I'm so pissed they didn't include that in the movie because I feel like his abuse kind of just comes out of nowhere and it's confusing as a viewer. And B, like the whole reason I like the book is because it left you these breadcrumbs of like warning signs to look for, and they didn't do that in the movie. And that's why it's really important to talk about them and bring it out of the darkness and into the light. I think for women, you know, Pick Me Rehab for us today is one way to navigate this reality of a world we live in for yourself is to not be a pick-me and to decenter men and build women-centered communities that will keep you safe. And so if you do find yourself in a harmful situation, like you have that support and maybe even that guidance to like shepherd you away from that, because it can be very violent and very hard to leave a toxic situation like that. The easiest way to do it is to never get into it. And obviously hindsight's 2020. So that's way easier said than done. But the more you have those women-centered communities and spaces, the more you have sort of guidance and support and guardrails in making decisions in your life and having people help vet things you're going through before it gets too intense. And again, part of centering women and decentering men is like to not seek that male validation so much so that you end up in a situation where you are just not an equal partnership, because the way you get there is by betraying yourself and your own boundaries. The same system of oppression that expects women to do it all and be super moms and take care of everyone else before taking care of themselves, aka the patriarchy, also expects the planet to keep giving and giving and giving. And neither Mother or Earth or women can keep up with these demands. Just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions. Like, think about how bad it was for the planet that Jeff Bezos just wanted to like go for a joyride up into space. And like, we're out here like trying to figure out what's recyclable and what's not. And like, I'm not saying don't recycle. I am just saying, I am saying that like 100 companies are responsible for 71% of what's bad for the earth. They are building that for a certain demographic of people. And again, that's one of the biggest problems of climate change is that the climate deniers are in power. So many of the top polluters are the same people that are downplaying or outright denying climate change. They're betting on their short-term profits and leaving it to everyone else to clean up the mess, all while like gaslighting us and figuring out which seat on the spaceship they're going to sit on. Like, it's insane. It's not great. Both our Earth and women, generally speaking, are culturally sort of seen as resources to be used up and discarded. I know that's a harsh way to say it, but so rather than being like nurtured and valued for the life that they provide, they're being exploited or used up or discarded or all of the above. Women create life, Earth sustains life, and both are like being treated like, A, it's no big deal and anyone could do it. not true. B, like it's endlessly renewable. And we see it happening to women all the time. We see women find their partner, have kids with them just for their male counterpart to leave them and go find like a younger woman or go cheat on them with their secretary or whatever. Like we see that trope time and time again. And I'm not saying this happens to every woman or every person who gives birth or whatever, but like, come on, that trope is there for a reason. It's because it happens. Like cheating on your pregnant wife or wife that just gave birth with your nanny, your secretary, your whatever younger woman in your life, like that happens often, often enough that there's like a trope about it. And the billionaires are literally doing that same thing that they've done over and over again with the women in their lives to Earth and being like, I'm going to go for this hot planet over there, Mars, no pun intended. And if you're like me, sometimes you sit there and you think about like everything going on in the world and it's like, I'm just going to give up. And like, that's not what I want to do. It can feel very daunting when you kind of like peek into the shadows of systems of oppression. RuPaul says all the time, and I love this, is you can look at the darkness, but don't stare at it. And I think that is really important to remember. Like, let's look at it. Let's acknowledge it. Once you can acknowledge that it's there and once you can observe it, you can start to like unlearn these norms and you can start to empower yourself to make choices that are better for you and your loved ones. But just because we want to look at it and acknowledge it doesn't mean we have to stare at it. Doesn't mean we need to live in that place, because you can't combat darkness with darkness. You combat darkness with light. Meanwhile, women are out here like building friendships, prioritizing self-care, like thriving in their group chats, you know, not just texting their friends like sup. You know, women do a really good job of maintaining relationships. Men are not always taught that same skill. I've heard stats that like when there's a heterosexual relationship, when the woman dies first in like a marriage, the man normally dies shortly after because like they don't have like the same relationships to lean on. I'm sort of like over this notion of like women having to fix things that men are breaking. And I think that's what's so tricky about this conversation for me is I like want to shine a light on it because I do see the ways in which like this epidemic is negatively impacting me because of the way that it is inspiring men. Like this loneliness breeds this sort of darkness that welcomes hate and mistrust and manipulation that has these men voting and acting in ways that are harmful for myself and other people that I love and just like humanity as a whole. So I like wish there was more I could do. And also I'm like, man, figure it out. Figure it out. Like ask a friend for help, like call a friend, phone a friend. And I wish I could explain why it was so hard for them. It's like the simplest explanation is the right explanation here. Men are lonely because the patriarchy tells them they can't be vulnerable. So it's like super soak sprayed all at her and she has to absorb it all like a sponge. And like, that's not great either. And, you know, I think some people are introverts and they need less friends, and that's not who I'm talking about. And community means different things for different people. Like if you just have two close friends you can lean on, that can be plenty for some people. It is not your job. You do not need to be doing all of that. So what are subtle ways that misogyny sneaks into relationships? Here are some everyday red flags. I think if you ask for someone's outlook and they say that they're just traditional, that is code for I expect my woman to cook for me, clean for me, and basically be emotional support human. You know, it's like, are you looking for a partner, a teammate, and a spouse, or are you looking for a pseudo mom, nanny, toy, baby machine? And this is an important one, women, because I don't know very many women who want to be the latter in their relationship. Even in the beginning, once you're like, I can do this. This is fun. Even if you like cooking, even if you like cleaning, even if you like those things, like it gets old. It gets old. Speaking of which, this leads us to the next red flag, which is the emotional labor gap. Are you his girlfriend, his mom, and his unpaid therapist? Because red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. Another red flag is weaponized incompetence. I actually learned this term on TikTok. And so if you're on the algorithm that I'm on, you've probably heard about this. And it's a major red flag. It's basically men being like, I don't know how to load the dishwasher the right way. So that you're like, I'll just do it. If he can run a fantasy football league, but can't put his socks away in the right drawer or can't load a dishwasher, that's a choice. That is a choice, babe. That is a choice. And a red flag for us women that we do often is the cool girl trap, where we feel pick me pressure to tolerate bad behavior to seem low maintenance. This is a red flag, women. You are the red flag. I see people who are in relationships where it doesn't add to their life. It like takes. And if that's the kind of relationship you're in, chances are a lot of those dynamics have to do with the fact that there's enough space in your relationship for misogyny. And a lot of where that stems from, honestly, is insecure men. Insecure men will do so much to like metaphorically kick their female partner, the woman in their life, in the back of the leg so she's like on the ground. Metaphorically. Maybe not, but yeah. So watch out for that. Watch out for insecure men. Insecure men are like a breeding ground for so much misogyny because they just cannot handle you being like a competent, complete person because that threatens them. So if you don't see the ways that that is like impacting women's safety and taking away our civil liberties, then you don't care about us. Then he doesn't care about you, babe. He does not care about you. If he doesn't want you to have the same rights that he does, he thinks of you as less than him. It's as simple as that. I don't know how else to explain it. A good sort of like question to ask yourself if you're dating someone and you're like, is this the guy for me? There are some things that I don't know if it's a yellow flag or a red flag, like, but other than that, he's really great. Ask yourself, if you had a daughter, would you want her to marry this man? Would you want her to marry him, date him, this kind of man? If the answer is no, you have your answer, honey. You got your answer. Other questions that you can ask yourself, or like things to look out for, is when he talks about his exes, does he respect them or does he frame them as crazy? Okay, obviously certain people are bad in relationships and that brings out each other's crazies. And like there are people who have had like really intense, insane exes. That's the thing. I think the quickest way, other than the politics of it all, the quickest way to tell if you are in a throuple with misogyny is if you feel like you are an unpaid intern waiting for that job within your relationship. So what do I mean by that? The same ways that unpaid interns are like, I'm doing this tough work and I'm sticking it out, but I'm going to get a job out of this and then it's going to look great on my resume and then I'll get into the career field I want and then all my dreams will come true in the future. Like all of that potential, if that's how you feel in your relationship where you're like, okay, it's hard now and I'm toughing it out, but he's going to marry me and then we're going to have this great life together and white picket fence and kids, like maybe you're dating him for his potential. And you know, when I met my man, there was a lot of potential I dated him for sure. And also like in the moment, things were good. How do I explain this? Like if you're only dating someone for their potential, they might never realize it. So if you're feeling like that unpaid intern waiting for it to turn into a job, you might be in a throuple with misogyny because that might be misogyny's sneaky way, sneaking in there, expecting you as the woman to tolerate him, help him, support him, nurture him. I've seen women do all of that. 5 years later, sitting there waiting for an engagement ring, didn't take that job opportunity so you could stay in the same place with him or move from the city I was in and left my friends and job behind so I could be with this man just for like no commitment and just for like none of that potential to pan out. When women are harmed, we see so many times like, what was she wearing? Why was she walking alone? Why did her friends leave her? And it's like, why are we asking those questions? And why aren't we asking, why did her turning him down make him want to strangle her? Why did her walking across the street make him want to stalk her and break into her house in the middle of the night? I think we should be asking those questions because it really doesn't matter what she was wearing. If he wants to be violent, he is going to be violent regardless. I feel like a really simple way to say this is, let's look at this logic. Why are we expecting women to avoid being attacked, but we don't expect men to stop attacking? The math isn't mathing, but there are like lip glosses that are weapons. There are like mascaras that are weapons. There are like these, like women have come so far in finding ways to protect themselves where these like things that we'll just carry in our purse. It's like we're like spies out here running ops against every single man just in case he is the enemy. Because it's not all men, but it is always men. Let me say that again. It is not all men, but it is always men. And that is why women have come up with solutions like lip gloss that is actually a knife, or turning their keys into a weapon and putting it in between their fingers when they walk to the car, or knowing that pepper gel is better than pepper spray because pepper gel squirts right into the assailant eyes and pepper spray sprays everywhere, which will also be more likely to like push back and come onto you. Like, why do I know all of these things? I did not seek this information out, but here I am, hand in hand with my pepper gel and my Hydro Flask Newsflash, don't think I won't turn my hydro flask into a weapon if I need to. More importantly, victim blaming shifts the blame off the perpetrator. It shifts the blame off the men and inherently makes it so men don't have to grapple with the consequences of their own actions, of their own violence, of their own horrific behavior. Telling women to be careful feels like the biggest gaslight of all time because the burden should not fall on us. It should fall on the predators. And I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. And it's even more gaslighty because guess what? Women are careful. We are careful as hell. And bad things still happen. So the problem isn't us. It is a world that refuses to protect us. According to RAINN, RAINN, 97% of reported rapists never spend a day in jail. 97%. And we've seen it often. The athletes, celebrities, powerful men literally have their crimes erased because of their status. Harvey Weinstein is the perfect example of this. He was literally like what started the Me Too movement because he had so many allegations against him for the horrible things he did to women. And his convictions in New York were overturned. They were overturned. And it's no wonder women don't come forward. The justice system seemingly protects perpetrators. We saw like a similar thing with Brock Turner, who was like caught on camera. There was like, it wasn't he said, she said. There was like visual evidence about it. And they were like, he seems like a good kid. I don't want to ruin his future. Like, okay, well, what about that girl's future? And the trauma she's going to have to live with and get over. Judges literally let these kinds of men walk free because it would ruin their life. Like, what about the lives of the women they are ruining by being this violent, horrible predator way? And when you think about it like that, it's like, what is stopping men from being violent? If they think that they can get away with it. America was a country that was created because they were like, we want to not have religion be a part of the laws. Like separation of church and state was like the reason America started. Also like not wanting a monarchy. But that was like a combo because the monarchy and the church were like, and so to see politicians like preach Christian values and spread Christian nationalism and say like trans people shouldn't do this and gay people shouldn't do this and women shouldn't do this because it doesn't align with my Christian values. Like, how is that a talking point? Like there's supposed to be a separation of church and state. What do you mean? If it doesn't align with your Christian values, don't get top surgery. If it doesn't align with your Christian values, don't have an abortion. Like, why does your values have to inform how I want to live? You don't know my religion. When I talk about this online, often in my comment sections, I get people being like, well, just close your legs. Well, you shouldn't be using this as birth control. And it's like, wait, are you not hearing what I'm saying? For me, this doesn't even feel like a stance on abortion. This feels like a stance on like a human who needs life-saving care. And that care happens to be an abortion. But I think it really shows the way that the narratives around bodily autonomy, women's health, and abortion is really, really like said through this like tunnel of nuance, like disregarding the nuances. Like if someone needs an abortion or they're going to die, like chances are that person was trying to have a baby. Like chances are that person wanted to carry their baby to term, but like things went wrong and it was ectopic pregnancy or who knows what, you know? And so for our government to not prioritize the woman's life over the fetuses is really scary to me because honestly, I want kids. And if I was in a place where like it was me or my fetus, I would be like, sorry, baby, like I'm doing what I got to do to survive. And I think most people would feel that way. And if they didn't, like, okay, sure, do you? But I'm sure my husband would feel that way. My husband would be like, get this fetus out of here. Let's save my wife because like he doesn't want to be raising kids without me. Yep, you heard that right. Certain lawmakers in this country want to make it illegal for pregnant women to travel, or at the very least to monitor pregnant women who travel. Why would some states want to track pregnant women's travel, you ask? That's a good question. Thanks for asking. Republican lawmakers are proposing to monitor and restrict pregnant women from traveling to prevent them from leaving restrictive states to get an abortion. Some bills are even suggesting tracking menstrual cycles of women to ensure they aren't traveling to terminate pregnancies, which like, how are the states going to get this information? Are you going to go into my menstrual cycle tracking app? What if I'm late? What if I have PCOS? What if I was really stressed out that month and I missed my period? What if I lie about it in my app? Like, how are you going to track this? Is it going to be word of mouth? Are people going to be snitching on each other? Are women going to be ratting each other out like the freaking witch trials all over again? Like, how are you going to enforce this? The fact that they are introducing this is scary, but thinking about the ways in which they could actually enforce this is terrifying to me, especially when you think about the ways that, again, this isn't about abortions. It's about creating a system where the government owns women's bodies, where the government is in charge of what women can do with their bodies, where they can travel with their bodies, all of it. These influencers are part of a bigger playbook. When women are self-policing and upholding gender roles with such rigidity, willingly, mind you, it gives the patriarchy a break from oppressing us because like we're doing the work for the patriarchy. It's like the patriarchy doesn't have to push us down because we're doing it ourselves and we're pretending like we love it. And the more women that buy into this idea that this way of life is like gonna make you happier or more peaceful or make you a better mom or make you have a better community or whatever it is that you're searching for, the easier it makes it for lawmakers to justify stripping back reproductive rights, defunding education, and essentially legislating women back into the kitchen. Don't be a part of your own downfall. Yeah, that can get really dangerous really fast. I mean, I think off the top of my head, like, let's talk about Gabby Petito. Her fiance, Brian Laundrie, ended up unaliving her. But before that, there were signs. He was controlling her. He controlled what she said, where she went, and even things that she was posting on social media. He was protective until suddenly it went from protecting and watching over her to taking her life from her. Another red flag to look out for is the "I just don't trust other guys" excuse. Oh no, I trust you, baby. I just don't trust other guys. Excuse me? Him saying, "I don't trust other guys," let's translate that. It's him saying, I see women as objects. I don't respect women, or I hang out in a friend group that doesn't respect women. So I assume other men don't respect women. I assume other men are going to take advantage of women. I assume other men are gonna da 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 da. Ding, ding, ding. That's a bell. This argument is basically saying that men are predators, which if you don't think women know this, we know. We know. We walk around with like things covering our cups when we're out so we don't get roofies dropped into our cups. We make our friends watch our drinks. We don't take drinks from strangers. We have a whole guidebook that we do because we know we're getting preyed upon. We have our pepper spray. We have our brass knuckles. We have our like any little thing, a key in between our fingers that can turn into a little weapon when we're walking to our car. Like we know. We don't need you to look out for us. Okay. But anyways, backtracking from my rant, the "I don't trust other men" argument is essentially saying, yeah, I know, I acknowledge other men are predators, which, okay, good. But instead of holding men accountable, he's controlling you. Like the math isn't mathing. The math isn't mathing there. If he actually trusted and respected you, he wouldn't think like another man could just swoop in and steal you from him. He wouldn't be insecure like that. And like, you're not an item to be stolen. You're not his PlayStation. You're a human being who can make your own choices. I think society really romanticizes obsession as devotion. And those are two very different things. When we are romanticizing obsession, we are seeing these toxic controlling behaviors and being like, he cares about me so much. And like, no, he doesn't. He cares about controlling you. He cares about having you. He doesn't care about you. Because if he cared about your best interests, he would want you to live a full life. They should be able to regulate their own emotions. They shouldn't act out or act crazy or be jealous or be controlling because of how much they love you. Like they should be able to handle feelings like love. If it feels like walking on eggshells in platform heels, it is not love. That's control. The second you start shrinking yourself to keep the peace, i.e. canceling plans, changing your outfit, hesitating before posting a pic because you don't want to deal with his reaction, stuff like that. Yeah, that's not partnership, babe. That's low-key surveillance. I see so many women today reclaiming their witchhood through spirituality, intuition, rituals, working with the moon. There's a huge conversation online about how women who have their menstrual cycle, because not all women do, especially women who are on birth control that like pause it, but women who do, you're in cycle with the moon. So the way that day is set up, it's like for a man, men get their testosterone, like they have a day daily cycle, basically, like from morning till night, where women have like a 28 to 31 day cycle. And so women are now being encouraged, especially women who own their own businesses or can like create their own schedule, to have their schedule tailored to their cycle. And I've recently started doing this, and it's a game changer. Purity culture is just the patriarchy in a white dress. We don't like her. What you might not know about purity culture is its evangelical origins. Modern day purity culture exploded in the US in the 1990s and early 2000s, and it's rooted in white evangelical Christianity. You know, it was a time of true love waits. It was a time of purity rings. It was a time of hanging out with your youth pastor every night of the week for some reason. And girls are taught, not only Christian evangelical girls, like commonly throughout the world, girls are taught that their virginity is their value. And if they lose their virginity, they are no longer valuable to a man, which is crazy. These young girls are taught that their worth is tied to their sexual purity. Like, why? And that once you have sex, you're less than, you're damaged goods, I don't even want to say it. And the most frustrating part of this is the double standard. Why do boys get a free pass? Boys will be boys. Other than the fact that boys aren't held to this standard, another form that this double standard takes is that boys are told to control their urges, maybe, but they're not told that they are not going to be a good husband or father or whatever if they don't control those urges. They're just like, it's like a light suggestion that the boys should control their urges. And at the same time, girls are not only responsible for their purity in themselves, they're responsible for controlling. I just feel like all women have been, like the sluttiness has been used against them. And so I hope we all choose this and then like stack the other ones on top and do those too. But okay. One way to channel your inner slut is to say something out loud, especially something you have been taught to whisper or to be silent about. So what does this look like? Share a desire or a fantasy you have with your partner or even a friend. And if this all feels really uncomfortable to you, you can even journal it. Like you can share it with yourself because sometimes we repress these things so much. But whatever it is, anger, joy, love, fantasy, play, express it. Put it into the world. Again, I encourage you to share it with someone so you can break through that sort of like way that so many of us center what other people think, and we're worried about that instead of centering our truth. And the other side of this coin that I want to get into is not only are we erasing women, when we do this, we are also adding or creating this narrative of like men are so smart, and because they are so smart, we allow them not to be a fully formed human, and we give them so much more leeway because like no one else could do what they do, so we'll just let them have it because they're so smart. You know, it's this sort of like tortured genius trope, and it's like, is he a tortured genius or is he just emotionally unregulated? Because if you can't calm your nervous system down on your own, if you can't like control your emotions on your own, like how smart are you? We see it time and time again where like being brilliant but difficult is super romanticized if it's a man, super unacceptable if it's a woman. This lawsuit could involve over 1 million vehicles. So just to recap, he's cutting budgets, hyping crypto, getting sued, and still being called a genius. If a woman did half of this, she would be called unstable and possibly jailed. They've lobotomized women for a lot less. I know it's a different time, but that's the era they want to make it great back to, when we're shrinking ourselves to appease other people and when we're not able to show up as our authentic self and not able to feel safe. And that's what boundaries are. It's a way for us to feel safe. So let's get into the root of why you're a people pleaser. I'm a reformed people pleaser. I don't know if I'm totally reformed, but I'm like working on reforming my people pleaserness. So let's dive into that. Let's dive into why society rewards women who abandon themselves and how to lovingly say no, how to draw a boundary without it needing to be a whole big deal. So let's say a little girl's pigtail is pulled. She'll often be told something like, well, girls just mature faster than boys, or that's him showing you he likes you, which is so twisted that we're telling little girls like when they're mean to you, they like you. Let's not do that anymore. Not only are we asked to be likable, we're often reprimanded for being assertive, and we're praised for being accommodating. And one thing I've been seeing, which I'm like, is this the beginning of the alt-right pipeline on the female side, is this sort of new layer that I'm seeing in this is like spiritual bypassing / like good vibes only. I've talked about it before, like the cool girl trap, you know, trying to be super cool and appeasing, especially when it comes to dating, is like ultimately like not a good move because you want someone who is gonna accommodate you and be there for you and not someone who's like, thinks you're super low maintenance because life only gets like harder. If you feel guilty when you do things that are in your best interest but might be letting someone down, that is the first step. Like that is the uncomfortable growth that you get to work on, because when you start setting these little boundaries or sometimes big boundaries, it can be very hard at first and it's a new feeling, and you might feel that in physical ways. It might make you shake, it might make you nauseous, but that's not you being weak, that's not you being wrong, that's you healing. That's you like creating new neural pathways and new options for living in your authentic truth. You're reintroducing yourself to the part of you that gets to say, I matter too. My needs are just as important. Virtually 100% of the people committing these crimes are men. If you round up, 98% of mass shooters are men. We need to address that. As a culture, guns are the number one cause of death for children and teens in the United States. The number one cause of what is killing them. More than any sort of disease, more than car crashes, more than anything, it's pew-pews that are the reason they are not alive anymore. For children and teens in America, that is so not okay, is that women are 5 times more likely to be by a partner when there is a in the home. And we know that pew-pews are often used as a form of sort of coercive control before any shots are fired. So we don't love that for women. We really don't. Back to the 89% number, many mass shooters have a history of misogyny and or domestic violence. And we've talked about this in other episodes where like their manifestos are like, a girl turned me down, so now gotta take everybody out. We need to address that because this issue doesn't exist and that's the NRA we know today. They turned what they did so well, along with right-wing politicians and media, is they turned gun ownership into an identity war, aligning with conservative white male grievance politics. American gun culture isn't about safety. It's about identity, fear, and maintaining white patriarchal power because our kids are no longer safe to go to school. And as I said before, guns and DV go hand in hand, and it's not okay. Guns escalate control in abusive relationships without ever being fired, like just the threat of that. Weapon can do so much harm. The DOJ, under Trump's direction, has proposed bypassing a long-standing funding restriction that blocks the ATF from restoring gun rights to individuals who have been convicted, not accused of it, convicted of DV. This move would effectively allow violent offenders, including known abusers, to rearm whenever they want, which undermines decades of bipartisan safeguards. Gun safety advocates, including Everytown for Gun Safety, has called this a catastrophic rollback for survivor protections. More guns, fewer safeguards, and zero concern for the communities most impacted. We gotta call on the men. When 98% of mass shooters are men, like they're gonna be the ones that help us end this crisis. Ending gun violence means confronting male rage. It means confronting male entitlement. If we don't address that, it doesn't matter what safety measures we have in place. There will also always be this form of gendered violence in some shape or form. The ERA is an existential threat to the patriarchy. A lot of the people who vote on these kinds of issues benefit way too much from things staying unequal. The ERA is stuck in limbo because every time women get close to constitutional equality, suddenly it's too complicated, too late, or just not necessary. Which I read as this being something that threatens these mediocre men at the top. Think about it. If gender equality were locked into the Constitution, you couldn't just brush off pay gaps. You couldn't just ignore gender-based violence. And you wouldn't be able to just treat reproductive health care like a debate club topic. You'd have to actually hold people accountable. Project 2025 pushes traditional family structures over fairness and equality. The ERA would strengthen legal cases around pay discrimination, pregnancy discrimination, and workplace harassment. And again, with Project 2025 leading the way, it's important to know what we're dealing with here. Because saying you're pro-family shouldn't rub people the wrong way. Who doesn't want to support families? I do so much in my personal life to support working families, domestic violence survivors, women and kids. Who's not pro-family? Children are the way of the future, for sure. Very matriarchal, except not the way that Project 2025 is flipping it and reversing it. Project 2025 pushes the idea that a woman's highest calling is to be a wife and to be a mother, not to be a worker, not to be a leader, not to be a decision maker. They say they want to strengthen the family, but are doing nothing, but they have no policy or no agenda that actually wants to support working families. This administration is cutting back free school lunches and so many other benefits and social security that low-income families were receiving. So they don't want to help families. They're actively harming families. What they do want to do is push women out of the workforce and back into the kitchen, without saying it like that, obviously, because of optics. But Project 2025 is making the argument that policy should encourage traditional gender roles, which means rewarding households where men work and women don't. It's giving Architects of Gilead. It's giving Serena and Fred Waterford. Okay? And because I hate just hanging out in the theoretical, here are specific ways that Project 2025 undermines women's economic equality. Number 1, cutting access to childcare and paid leave. Project 2025 opposes federal investment to childcare. By the way, we're in a childcare crisis right now since the pandemic that we haven't recovered from in America. Well, first of all, this isn't random. This is strategic. If you keep women financially dependent, underpaid, or constantly battling discrimination, you keep them tired, quiet, and locked out of power. Ever heard of the glass ceiling? Like, they want to lower the glass ceiling, essentially, is what we're seeing. The ERA would treat this kind of structural gender bias as unconstitutional, not just like unfortunate, unconstitutional. We need that. Without the ERA, women are being forced to choose between survival and fairness. With the ERA, we get the power to fight for both. The second thing you can do, join or support local ERA coalitions. Most states have coalition groups that are fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment. Find them, volunteer, donate, show up, repost what they're posting. It all matters. There's no amount of help that is too small. Third thing you can do is educate your girls, educate your community, educate your family. Talk to your friends, coworkers, your book club. Talk to your gym crush. Talk to whoever you can about the ERA. Most people don't even know gender equality isn't in the Constitution. And that's not your fault, but it is your opportunity to spread the word. What is the male gaze and how do we internalize it? From a young age, women are taught to view themselves through the eyes of men, aka the male gaze. GAZE. We're taught to dress, speak, and even shrink ourselves, not for comfort, not for authenticity, but for appeal, and specifically to appeal men, to appeal boys. It's all about being wanted, not being good enough for yourself, but like being good enough for others. Again, specifically, usually men. And when you're dating through the male gaze, it's really easy to confuse validation and desire. What do I mean by that? We often mistake being wanted for actually wanting someone, which is pretty understandable when you think about it, because the patriarchy wires us to conflate external validation with internal desire. Like capitalism does the same thing we've talked about this, like with the job force and hustle culture and all of that. This is really similar to some of those concepts we've just discussed before. But attraction is not an obligation. Being seen is not the same as being loved. And if you tug at this thread a little more, not only are women and girls taught to prioritize external validation over their own internal needs and wants, they're also taught not to disappoint men. Like I remember being like in middle school and having boys have crushes on me and me not liking them back and being like, I guess I have to be your 7th grade girlfriend now, because how am I going to turn down a boy? Because like even as a 7th grader, I felt like I should be prioritizing men's needs over my own, or boys' needs at that age. I wasn't dating men as a 7th grader. Do you know what I mean? And that's just a little thing, you know, obviously I like didn't date my 7th grade boyfriend forever and like marry him. But I remember even from a really young age, when a boy liked me, it kind of felt like he just like assumed I would like him back and be his, where I was like, wait, what? Like, no, I don't like you back. Like, no, I don't want to do those things. And it kind of just felt like this pressure and this force. And no one explained it to me. No one told me that, but those were just the vibes. Those were just the vibes from a very young age. But red flag number 1, he wants a wife and not a partner. Let's talk about it. A lot of men do not want a partner. They want a wife, and not in a sweet, like, let's grow together and share everything kind of way. No, I mean like the 1950s fantasy where you cook, where you clean, where you soothe his emotions, where you have his babies, where you organize his dentist appointments, and somehow still make him feel like he's the strong leader of the household, even though he doesn't know where you keep the paper towels. Red flag number Number 2, let's talk about traditional marriage roles and the myth of helping. What do I mean by the myth of helping? When a man says like, I help around the house, what do you mean? It's your house. Help do what? Live in your house? That's him saying, I believe it's the woman's job by default. And I pitch in like, I'm a good boy who's doing above and beyond by like taking the trash out. Like, what? No one's gonna thank you for like helping do your job at work because that's your job. You're not helping. You're doing your job. So why are we giving out gold stars for that guy who like ran a dishwasher once this week? Like, no. Red flag number 3, a man who only wants a wife that cares for them and not a wife that challenges them. I was in a situationship once where he hooked up with multiple of my friends and then tried to be like, you were the one who said you didn't want to be exclusive. Well, you're the one who said you didn't want to date. So why are you mad that I'm moving like this? And it's like, okay, maybe like use your better judgment. Just because I don't want to be your girlfriend doesn't mean that like I'm okay with like sharing you with my friends. Also, like these were horrible friends. So that's a whole other thing. So yeah, I think men like to act like just because you don't have a label on things, they can move crazy. They can move mad, as they say in Love Island, UK. So when walking into a situation, I implore you to ask, is this romantic or is it a red flag? I think the easiest sort of example to point to for this is being love bombed. Love bombing is crazy because it mimics intimacy while simultaneously overriding someone's boundaries. Like, raise your hand if you've been love bombed. It's crazy. If your partner tells you you're overreacting, this might be like micro gaslighting. Maybe it's not full gaslighting. And maybe I overreact sometimes. Overreacting is human. But often when you share your feelings or call someone in or out about something and they're like, you're overreacting, that's a red flag. That's sort of them saying like, your feelings are inconvenient and I'm not going to deal with them. So I'm just going to label you as being dramatic or overreacting or whatever. If it happens like one off, sure, maybe. But even if you are overacting or being dramatic, like your feelings are still valid and your partner should care about what is getting you so spun up and care about your feelings. So if it's just like dismissive overreacting, like that's a red flag. When they say something mean and you're like, hey, that hurt my feelings, or if they say something inappropriate and you're like, why would you say that? And they're like, oh, I'm just joking. You can't take a joke. You can't take a joke. Like, that's a red flag. That's them being like, oh, you caught me being cruel. I was trying to be mean to you and now you're standing up for yourself. So I'm going to like flip it and reverse it on you. And one we have seen so much, especially with Amaya Papaya on Love Island USA, I feel like I saw this so much, is someone being like, you're too sensitive. I feel like that's normally translation for like, I don't want to be accountable. Like, I don't want to deal with your feelings. All starts here first. Number 1, first and foremost, your intuition is not drama. It's data. Listen to what your gut is saying. Listen to what your womb is saying. Listen to your intuition. That's not you being anxious or dramatic. It can be, you know, sometimes like I'm an anxious girl and sometimes I'm like, is this real or is this anxiety? Louisiana passed a law that makes possession of the abortion pill a criminal offense if you don't have a prescription for it. And like, how are you going to get a prescription for it if this is how we're feeling about it? And when they did this, they explicitly were citing Project 2025's suggested language to define the abortion pill as a controlled substance. The impact of this will look like women who take this pill without a prescription, or even doctors who dispense it, could face criminal charges. This is going to drive reproductive care underground and endanger pregnant people. And this is the thing about reproductive care, other than the fact that like, leave women alone and let them make choices that are right for them. Mifepristone, the abortion pill, is used for abortions, yes. It's also used when needed in miscarriages, and also in the crash cart in delivery rooms. And I'm not a nurse or doctor, but it being classified as a controlled substance removes it from the crash cart. So in times where they need it, in like when you're going to be using a crash cart, that means someone's like coding and like at the brink of death kind of thing, they no longer have that medicine in their toolbox and either have to like go run and get it and hope that person is still alive and well by the time they come back, or like that person doesn't get that as a life-saving medication. Why is a fetus who has no chance of being alive being prioritized over a fully realized human woman, putting her reproductive system and her life at risk? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Project 2025 promotes the idea of fetal personhood. This legal framework blurs the line between abortions and miscarriages and all of that. So providers are erring on the side of legal safety opposed to the patient safety. And this is because fetal personhood gives the fetus rights over the person carrying the fetus. When this is our reality, women are second-class citizens. Women are essentially livestock. And this crazy stuff is having real life implications, real consequences, and real tragedies. In Texas, at least 2 pregnant women died after emergency care was delayed due to the state's abortion bans. This uncertainty around the medical expectations that these bans have implemented is literally killing women. Talk to your cousin, talk to your neighbors, talk to your coworker, share this episode. Don't act like what's going on is normal. Don't normalize it, not to yourself. It's hard. I get it. It's hard, like human nature, for these things to become normal, but try your hardest not to normalize this. Your voice is powerful. Your freedom is worth defending. You can reject the world they are building. The pipeline is targeted. It's not accidental. They know who to radicalize. Their target demographics are people who experience cultural displacement, for example, such as white teenage boys who feel left behind or rejected by the cute cheerleader. They go for straight men struggling with relationships in a world where women want to be treated like equal. And they hook them in with like incel logic and trad wife nostalgia. They go after middle class and low income families who are stressed about finances or the changing times. And they blame immigrants, they blame trans kids, they blame DEI. That's just the reality. So if you really cared about your safety, your family's safety, your children's safety, your sister's safety, you wouldn't be persecuting people who aren't the ones putting them in danger. Facts, not feelings, right? Right? And it's not just my opinion. Numerous studies show that immigrants, both legal immigrants and undocumented immigrants, commit crimes at lower rates than native-born citizens. The danger is also our growing tolerance for this, because the more certain marginalized groups are dehumanized, the more that becomes tolerated. And that's just such a scary thought to me. And I often, when I talk about this on TikTok, I get a lot of people, conservative white men typically, saying something to the effect of like, well, that's what happens when you're a criminal. We want to know what's going on in these ICE detention centers. And interrupt casual cruelty when you hear it. When you hear someone saying like, well, they should have just followed the law. They should have come here legally. Like, don't let people use that as a justification for torture. Empathy is not an enemy of the state. Please refuse to normalize cruelty, because we've seen what happens when you do start to normalize it. But the problem isn't the choice. The problem is the context, and how the context of these choices often go unexamined or unquestioned. Like, is it really empowering if the system is only giving you like one of 2 doors to walk through? Is that really a choice? And I think the consequence of that setup is that choice feminism keeps us focused on individual freedom while this system stays rigged, while the boot stays on our neck. It sort of says like, you do you, while quietly reinforcing inequality. It silences critique by saying, don't judge her choices, even if those choices uphold misogyny, even if those choices uphold white supremacy, even if those choices uphold economic injustice. And it divides us. I think that's the most painful part about it. It divides us, because instead of asking, how do we build a better world for all of us, we're stuck asking like, am I a bad feminist for liking X, Y, and Z? You don't have to judge other women to critique the system. It's totally fine to say like, okay, that choice might feel good for her, but let's talk about the system that reinforces these choices. So essentially what I'm trying to say is like, let's not police individuals. Let women live. Let's police the structures, okay? TERFs use their transphobia to uphold biological essentialism, suggesting that womanhood is tied to anatomy or chromosomes. That's the exact patriarchal structure that has been used to police women's bodies, deny us rights, and determine our value for centuries. Transphobia isn't feminist. We've already seen how the patriarchy tries to reduce women to body parts and reproductive capacity. That's full on display. I think it's so important to look at slavery and reproductive exploitation, especially today when our government and our schools are trying to erase critical race theory. And there's this notion that talking about slavery sometimes makes white kids feel guilty, like whatever. The reason we should talk about history as a whole, including slavery, which is a part of American history, is so that we understand the historical context and certain foundations that have laid the groundwork for societal norms today. Just like this is true when it comes to civil rights, health disparities, and so many aspects in the way that racism is just systemic here in the US. Let's look at it as it relates to reproductive freedom and reproductive justice, because it's important to understand how the US has used forced birth in the past, to understand why they might want forced birth right now. As we know, during the hundreds of years that slavery was alive and well in the United States, enslaved Black women were forced into pregnancies, and those children children, like the enslaved pregnant women, became property. Really think about what this meant. Enslaved Black women's bodies were the economy. Forced births meant more property and more production for the enslavers. More horribly, these women didn't have a choice. Not only were they forced into pregnancy, they were forced into non-consensual, I can't say it on the internet, the video is going to take down. They were forced into non-consensual sex, also known as grape, just to have their children sold as commodities. That's OG family values right there when it comes to the US. So just let the reality of that and the fact that that went on for hundreds of years sink in. Our society is obsessed with holding pregnant women accountable and not the men who harm us, and not the societal conditions that harm us, and not like the other factors that play into this. And it's exactly why punishing women does not make sense. These prosecutions predominantly go after poor women, women of color. They turn miscarriage or addiction or trauma into criminal acts instead of moments of care. Push for federal protections, yes, but also push for state and city protections in state and city elections, because right now federally, like, I don't know, that's kind of a tough one for us currently. Like, let's control what we can control. It's not the goon in the White House. Build solidarity. Reproductive justice isn't just about abortion. It's about healthcare. It's about housing. It's about childcare. It's about, maybe I should have started the podcast off with that sentiment, because men, wake up. Being respectful leads to better sex, okay? Studies show that couples with egalitarian values like shared decision-making, mutual respect, equitable household labor report higher sexual satisfaction. And it makes sense when you think about it. When women feel respected outside of the bedroom, they're more likely to feel safe, confident, and connected inside of the bedroom. Here's the shift. Individual empowerment is important and it feels good, but collective empowerment changes the world. Suffragists didn't win the right to vote just because like one woman won the Senate. It was a collective movement. They organized, marched, got arrested, and fought together. The civil rights movement wasn't just MLK's I Have a Dream speech. It was thousands of people running boycotts, freedom schools, and underground networks. I mean, even look at like recent history. In 2023, the Hollywood writers and actors strike wasn't successful because of one writer. They were successful because over 100,000 workers, writers, people across the industry walked out and went on strike. Those are the benefits of collaboration. When we actually lift each other up instead of tearing each other down, society doesn't just survive, it thrives. I mean, you know how I feel about gun regulation? Like, that is a perfect example of this. Like, the same women who are terrified of their children being read a book by a drag queen for drag queen story hour or whatever are the same moms who are like, don't change any of the gun laws. In fact, it's okay that Trump has rolled back gun laws because that's fine and that's whatever. Like, drag queens aren't hurting your kids the same way that white boys and white men predominantly are going into schools and taking kids out. I don't understand how you've been convinced to let that be normalized. But the idea of like a drag queen being in your neighborhood feels like a personal attack to you. Because by the way, if you don't want your kid to go to drag queen story hour, like, no one's forcing them to. You can totally just like not go. And I think it's important that we see how women sell the patriarchy back to other women. Conservative women are often the most effective messengers of patriarchal values because they find a way to package submission as empowerment. Whether it's tradwife influencers on TikTok glamorizing the 1950s housewives, or political figures arguing that women don't need equal rights, these voices normalize regression by making it look like a choice and making that choice look like empowerment. It's especially harmful because when women deliver these talking points, you know, saying like abortion is murder or feminism is destroying families, it shields male politicians. Here are 5 steps to deprogram someone or maybe even yourself from red pill content. Step 1. Check the emotional hook. Red pill and authoritarian content always lead with emotion. Fear, rage, shame, or loneliness. If you feel instantly upset or like everyone's out to get you, pause, because that, my friend, is manipulation, also known as fear tactics. Before engaging or sharing the post yourself, ask, am I reacting emotionally or thinking critically? Step 2, ask, Who benefits? These pipelines aren't about truth. They are business models. Influencers are monetizing your outrage through your clicks, through merch, through courses, through ad revenue. And politicians use the same playbook. They scare you to secure your votes or your donations. Every time you hear a claim, ask who benefits from this? Who is profiting off your fear? Step 3, spot the red flags of cult logic. Here are some signs that you're dealing with cult-style manipulation. Us vs them framing. This might look like real men versus weak men, good moms versus selfish women, patriot versus liberals are monsters. I think we've heard a lot of that one lately. Another tactic is claims of secret knowledge. We know the truth. We're going to expose it. They won't tell you it. They want to mind control you. That's like an Uno reverse of mind control and manipulation. Also, look out for isolation tactics. If you disagree with us, you're a traitor. That sort of thing. Back to the us vs them thing really quick. I'd be remiss not to mention the dehumanization of the other side. Comparing immigrants to animals. Comparing liberals to monsters. Again, look for the dehumanizing language because it is rampant and it is a red flag. Honestly, write these red flags down somewhere. The more you can name, the more you become aware of it, the more you will be able to notice it and the less power they have over you. Culty content often follows the same formula. It's fear-based headlines. It's us versus them. Them saying liberals want to destroy your family is not an analysis. It's manipulation. Step 4, fact check the contradictions. Authoritarians love hypocrisy. If they're claiming to be pro-family while cutting free lunch and childcare programs, they might not be as pro-family as they say. If they're pushing law and order while voting for a criminal or supporting politicians who allow the NRA to block every gun safety law, they might not care that much about law and order. If they're saying they care about children while ICE puts children in cages, they might not care that much about children. I suggest that you keep a running list of contradictions you see because hypocrisy is often what breaks the spell of people who are caught up in this pipeline. And last but not least, step 5, build or join a better community. Cults and red pill culture thrive on giving lonely people a sense of belonging, and leaving can feel like a void, which is why a lot of people join or never leave, or both. You can replace this with healthier spaces, with feminist content, activist groups, book clubs, sports leagues, support circles. Encourage curiosity, podcasts, documentaries, or even just following accounts that create empathy, care, equity, things like that. Deprogramming isn't about yelling at someone until they disagree with you, although that is tempting sometimes. It's about reminding them that they deserve more than fear and control and manipulation. One of the most important things to do in post-war America, in the times that we're living in, is to have some fucking fun, okay? And to rest. Have a nice little soft girl nappy nap. We need to be taking care of ourselves so much right now. And joy is resistance, rest is resistance. Like, we are running a marathon. This is not a sprint. We cannot just consume and worry all day long because that will lead to burnout. And that doesn't help the cause. That doesn't help anyone. The patriarchy thrives on despair. Fascism thrives on fear. Joy is a protest. Joy is community building. And when you're chronically in fight or flight, which, you know, doom scrolling or just like keeping up with current events can easily put someone into fight or flight these days. And when you're chronically in that state, you don't have the bandwidth to imagine alternatives or to resist effectively or to take care of yourself and your loved ones. So let's stay out of fight or flight. Okay. A functioning democracy requires like a strong middle. We can't just have like the elite and the poor. We can't have no middle class. We can't have no moderate Republicans or Democrats. Like, things are just so at each end on an extreme everywhere you look, it seems like. But yeah, probably most importantly, build coalitions, community organization, and cross-movement alliances. We really need that to get us through this and to be able to create safety in our communities to protect each other from this. That is also what will help democracy survive. Just vote and we'll be cool. But if you want to get involved, coalition building is so important right now. Reproductive justice, racial justice, climate justice, labor rights. They're not separate fights. They're different heads of the same snake of oppression. The more we show up for each other, the stronger we all become, and the harder it is for authoritarians to divide us. Every small act, checking your registration, sharing a link, having that conversation with a friend or family member, it stacks up. And when we stack together, that's how we flip the seats. And that's how we flip the script. And it's time to flip the script. Being a feminist means fighting for rights that should be basic. 2026 is our next test. And white women, we see you not voting or voting against your best interests. So please understand the impact this is going to have on you and kids. DEI is a perfect example. White women benefit the most from DEI initiatives, yet white women are the reason, essentially, they're being stripped away because so many white women are voting for these conservatives that are saying these things are horrible. So please understand what it is that you're supporting. So I really, really hope to see you next week because that is a very important topic for women everywhere. In the meantime, stay soft, stay loud, and stay in the fight, mama. Mwah. Bye. See you next week.